Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the quotes attributed to Mark Twain, which has never been verified, but if he didn't say it, he should have, which is that history doesn't always repeat itself, but it usually rhymes. In the late 1930s, there was a very deliberate and sophisticated Nazi propaganda effort in the United States, up to and including members of Congress, to affect American opinion and political opinion toward the Nazi regime and the defense of Europe. And it worked until Pearl Harbor. Today, Chairman McCall and Chairman Turner in the House have both acknowledged a very sophisticated and concentrated Russian misinformation and propaganda attempt here in the United States to affect our public policy toward Ukraine. And indeed, both of them acknowledge that this has up to and including members of Congress. Do you see, Mr. Secretary, a danger to this country from this kind of concerted, conscious misinformation campaign on the part of the Russians?
Absolutely, Senator, and that danger increases on a daily basis. And to your point, it is sophisticated to the degree that people don't know that where the information is coming from and how Russia is doing these kinds of things. But again, there is a danger. Yeah.
Well, it's one of the vulnerabilities that we have is also our greatest strength, which is the openness of our society, the First Amendment, free speech. The vulnerability is that our democracy is based upon information, and if the information stream is compromised by a foreign actor, that endangers our country. One of my concerns is that it's very difficult to defend against such attacks. We don't want to be censoring the internet. We don't want to be censoring free flow of information. Our whole defense strategy in every other area is deterrence. In other words, deterrence is the key to our defense strategy, has been for 75 years, except in cyber and misinformation. I would hope that you would take back to Cybercom and the NSA the necessity of a deterrent, that is, the adversary, in this case Russia, if you are going to meddle in our politics, in our system, in our information pool in a deliberate and conscious way, you will pay a price for that. Not necessarily kinetic, but it could be cyber, it could be sanctions, it could be others. But one of my problems is that there doesn't seem to be a deterrent in this field, which indeed is the new frontier of warfare. Mr. Secretary, I hope you will take that thought back. If deterrence works in nuclear policy, in conventional kinetic policy, it also can work in this new frontier of misinformation to undermine the national security of this country.
I'll take that back, and we'll take it for action. We'll drill on possibilities to create that deterrent effect that you're talking about. So.
I'm afraid if we don't do that, it's just going to continue. There's no reason why it shouldn't. It's cheap for them, and it's very damaging to this country. With regard to Gaza, Senator Kaine laid out the situation very effectively. It's become apparent. I met with Prime Minister Netanyahu in January. The president's talked to him repeatedly. You use the word encourage. It's become apparent to me that the current government of Israel needs more than encouragement. And I was surprised that at the very week that the World Kitchen attack occurred and the continuing humanitarian crisis, that the administration approved the transfer of additional munitions to Israel, particularly offensive munitions. 2,000-pound bombs are not defensive. They're offensive, and they're not very precision. Why did the administration make that decision? It seems to me the president's hand would be strengthened significantly if he had said, we're going to pause this planned conveyance of these offensive weapons until we see some serious attention to the humanitarian crisis and also to the problem of civilian casualties.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to speak with my counterpart on this attack, and I was very upfront in terms of, you know, how horrific this was and the fact that they needed to be investigated and people held accountable. We're seeing some of that activity. In terms of, as a president engaged prime minister, I won't speak to that, you know, the contents of that conversation, but it clearly had an effect. We have seen changes in behavior, and we have seen more humanitarian assistance being pushed into Gaza. There needs to be more still, but again, I think, you know, the president's conversation did have a positive effect. Now, hopefully that trend will continue, but that's left to be seen. So.
Well, again, I think all of us feel Israel absolutely has not only a right, but a responsibility to defend itself, but it's the conduct by which they're doing so that is actually hurting Israel. That's what bothers me. I consider myself a friend of Israel, and by not separating the Palestinian civilians from Hamas, they are playing into Hamas's hands. When you kill a civilian child, their parents are not going to be very sympathetic to the people that let that bomb loose. And my concern is that, particularly when those bombs are coming from this country, we have a responsibility as well in terms of that, the way that war is being conducted, because we are engaged also in terms of the supply of the weapons. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.